Hey there, friends. This is Bill MacDonald, the Common Sense Math Doctor, and today's problem is brought to you by special request from a teacher whose child didn't understand how to do it. And because she was a writing teacher, then she had a little bit of trouble with it too. And it has to do with angles. Now, when you say that a line has a measure of something, it's different than what the degree that a ray passes through. So let me show you using my hands here. This is a right angle, and so it passes through 0 and 90, or 180 degrees and 90 when it's straight. So anything, they were asking for a measure of 70 degrees, which means it would be about this much, and 70. If this is right, 90-degree, everything here and less is acute, and everything past 90 all the way to 180, where a straight angle, we would have an obtuse angle. So they were not asking what point a ray passed through on this one, which was a huge distractor for all the kids that got it wrong. They were asking for another ray that could be drawn to have a measurement of 70, which would be about this much coming from this side and this much coming from this side. And remember that it doesn't have to be going through 0 or 180, as long as it has a measure of 70 degrees. So once you figure out what the measure is, make sure you flip that paper around so your students can see, regardless of which way you turn it, the measure of an angle doesn't change just because it's at a different position on a protractor line. So let me show you how I would best solve this problem. Uh, it was question number 12 on the fourth grade test from this past year. It only got 45% correct in the state, reporting category 3, student expectation 4.7D, draw an angle with a given measure. So that's the TEAC. So the problem was the ray that was mentioned in the problem. Ray GH has been drawn on the protractor as shown, and GH happens to cross through 70 on the bottom and 110 on the top. The question said to construct an angle that has a measure of 70, not passes through 70, another ray that starts at point G right down here, which means we're going to use that as one of the rays, GH, and passes through. Well, all of your students that got the answer wrong, or most of them, probably chose H because they saw an H near a 70, and even though point M is over here, a lot of your kids saw an H and a 70. So let me show you, when you're checking the measure, what you do is think of this 3-syllable word: difference, you subtract. So we're going to take these 4 letters and find out what their numbers are on the bottom and the top, so that we can check our work. Just like we did for H, it passes through 70 on the bottom of the protractor, going from smaller to larger, from right to left, and smaller from larger on the top from left to right. So you sort of have to do a guess and check, and so that your students don't get confused with letters, because F, G, H, and J represent points J, K, M, and N. They made sure they didn't cross your students up, but because of H passing through 70, I'm guessing that a lot of your kids chose that. So let me show you how I would set it up. You can use like a T chart. And so F said point J. Point J passes through 180 and 110. I went ahead and circled them. And so difference, you subtract. And so what we do is we subtract 180 minus the 70 and 110 minus 0. Why did we do that? Because it said point J, and so our first number on the bottom was 180 minus the 70 that it passed through was 110. And if you remember, a right angle is 90 degrees. So if your students would have done this, let me do it with the orange one so you can see it a little bit better. If your students would have done this, they would have seen that letter F, point J, created an angle that was more than 90. So it can't be that one. So that's what you can kind of use to compare. And if you happen to go the other way, then you can also check that way if you want to. Okay, so let's go ahead and check. Point G says, letter G says point K. And so we have, if I zoom in for you, a 0 on the bottom and a 180 on the top. So there's your 0 on the bottom and your 180 on the top. So difference, you subtract. So we're going to subtract always with a bigger number on top. Our letter H that we're using as our reference point, 70 minus where point K passes through, creates a measure of 70 degrees. So if you see that right there, 70 minus 0, because that's where K is 70. So that is a measurement of 70 degrees right there. And so if you double check the top, the 180 is bigger, so we'd subtract the number on the top minus the number on the top. 180 minus 110 is still equal to 70 degrees, because you're talking about the same ray, and it just depends on if you're looking at the bottom or the top. It creates a measure of 70 degrees. So the answer was, we read the problem and the question, we've underlined the problem and the question, we've labeled, we've marked it, we've executed our strategies. Now we're going to start to eliminate. We've already eliminated F because it has a measure of 110 degrees. We think that we're going to pick G because it does have a measure of 70 degrees. And so let's check that H point M. When you look at it, H point M, it has a 40 on the bottom, and if I zoom in for you a little bit better, 40 on the bottom and a 140 on the top. So there's your 40 on the bottom, and your 140 on the top. And we're going to be using the same other two numbers as before, 70 minus 30, because the difference of two rays, it becomes their measure. 30 degrees is the measure that point M would create. 140 minus 110 is 30 degrees. So as you can see, point M right here, point M through here, which is the one that a lot of your kids picked, that's not 70 degrees. So if you actually draw it, and if you count like this, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, you can do it that way, and you can see that it's only 30 degrees apart, but that's the one that most kids picked because of that letter H that just happened to have a 70 in it. Let's go ahead and eliminate, and we said that that was only 30 degrees. I'm actually going to put it in there because that was the big distractor, the difference between those two rays. And your last one says point, letter J, point N. And so point N has 110 on the bottom and a 70 on the top. There's your 110 on the bottom, and there's your 100, sorry, what did I do wrong here? Oh yeah, if you look at it, point N, um, it has a 110 on the bottom and a 70 on the top, and the one that we're using has the 70 on the bottom and the 110 on the top. So it just reverses the numbers, and so that could have been a distractor for a lot of kids. So we're subtracting our point N number. 110 minus the 70 creates 40 degrees, and our point N number, 110 minus 70, let me make sure that I'm saying that right. Point N, the one on the top, point N on the top. Oh, it would be the 70. So this last one, this was the one that was on the top, and we always make sure that we subtract with the big number on top, but it still comes out to 40 degrees. So we're going to eliminate letter J because it has a measure of 40 degrees. And so the only one that has the correct measure is letter G. So I suggest you make a tiny little circle, put a little G again right here. And for your kids that are careless with bubbling, have them pretend to bubble in their Scantron. And the last thing I recommend you do is place a G next to the number of the problem, circle them together so that the 12G in the book will match the 12G in the Scantron, or the 12G that you're submitting into your computer response. So there's a little bit of math surgery with measurement. Remember that 70 is about that much of a measurement, because 90 is like this, and no matter which way your 70 goes, it's gonna still be a measure. Even if you flip the protractor, 70 is 70 no matter which direction it comes from. Go ahead and share this with some of your math teacher friends. Please click like on my YouTube video. Subscribe if you're not already as part of my YouTube group, and share or tag one of your math teacher friends or a parent who has a child who might have missed this, which in fact was more than half of the kids in Texas in 4th grade. So just a reminder, I can't send you this because the state has not released the test yet. Just as a parent and as a tutor who's helping a parent of a child who struggled with this problem, I have to have access to it. So I'm just helping you for free. I don't represent TEA. They don't endorse anyone's products or strategies or anything like that, their company. But I just feel like we're blessed to be a blessing. So I just wanted to help you math teachers see a different way that kind of gives your kids a guess and check. But the way I did it with the top and the bottom angle, it allows them to check it two different ways to make sure that the measurement of 70 degrees was true, regardless of whether you measure from the top or the bottom. Thank you guys, and God bless.